If you can stop talking for 10 seconds, that would be fantastic. You want to hit the start timer on there? You want to hit? You want to start podcasting, genius?
Hey, Biff, did Adam and Eve ever have a date?
I thought we didn't have to do this anymore because I got it right the last time.
Hey, Biff, did Adam and Eve ever have a date?
Who's Adam and Eve? I don't know who these people are. Do they have a? Is that something that they like to eat? I don't know.
No, they had an apple.
Okay. So I kind of got it. I was there again. So
Yeah, you're right there. You know, you're on a roll. Let's see if you get this one.
no, that's not.
Hey, Biff, what do you call a romance that started at an aquarium?
What do you call a romance that started at an aquarium, Jacques?
Guppy love.
Yeah.
And you know what? I gotta say, Joe, that's the best Biff impression you've ever done. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Carnival Personnel. This is Jacques.
This is Joe. I'm acting like Biff. There's nobody else on the podcast today.
And me.
Well, we're waiting. Guys, yeah, we did one episode together, the year in review, mid-December, but so this is like the third time in like 3 months we've all been together. So it is great to see you, Biff. It's great that so far the Chateau Biff is standing in Los Angeles.
Right.
What is the latest on what's happening there? Because like we were just saying before we recorded, there's no news other than certain news we don't want to get into. But what's the latest?
Yeah, I mean, the fires have basically settled down, so it's kind of like it's kind of like the same thing with when you have these mass tragedies, right? It's like you go from rescue to recovery kind of a thing. So we're at a point where it's just a combination of things, right? I have a dozen, maybe more, people who've lost their homes. I have a few whose homes were saved, but they can't go in. Or if they go in, it's like, well, we got the water and electricity back, but it feels like, we're in like some kind of a chemical factory, sitting in our own house kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things that go on, but at least locally, right? A lot of that stuff still continues to be somewhat in the forefront. And obviously when you have stuff like they had the Fire Aid concert last week, so there's little things that kind of keep things alive, but we're at that point where it's that recovery phase, right? So
have they pre-scheduled the vicious mudslides that always follow these horrific fires for the spring, or are we going to play that by ear when it starts to rain?
Well, I mean, so it actually rained last week. And funny enough, like I didn't hear many issues with the fire ravaged place. I think the place that I did see the mudslide was actually in the Laguna Beach area, which is not really an area that was hit by a fire. But so but that obviously remains a concern, right? So
yeah, in the 20 plus years I lived in LA, been through a few fires, not like that, of course, but always the following rain season because there's no roots. Literal roots in the ground to keep things in place. Like it is always the tragedy isn't over yet,
Right. Yeah. And so, we'll see. I think the other part of it is that, and I think we're seeing this in the the southeast Hurricane Alley areas, right? Where they're talking about, we've never seen this before, but, and like people are trying to say, well, is this just a rare occurrence? I'm thinking, you know what? We've had multiple, 100-year storms, ravaging down, that seaboard. So I'm thinking that this kind of wind event and this kind of period of dry might be our new normal, right? So we'll
No,
see.
it is, and we should have Dr. Ross Sellers back on to talk about this
Yeah,
because in
yeah,
his thesis defense in 1980,
yeah.
which I had the privilege of being at, he said, exactly that in his thesis
Yeah,
that,
I would say that now's a good time to catch him because I heard like he maybe he's not getting paid and stuff like that. So yeah,
well, yeah, well,
We're not going to pay him either.
you know,
that's right.
just in
But
love.
at least he has free time.
But he had said back then that like the once in 100 year
Yeah,
storms are going to happen every couple years,
yeah,
and even here the weather is different, and
yeah.
it doesn't snow here anymore, Biff. I mean, literally, it doesn't snow. I mean, we got a dusting the other day, and it's super cold. So
That's
there's
that's the wrong word of liter. That's the use of literally. 'Cause
okay, yes,
it,
you
it
know, you're right.
literally doesn't snow. A little bit. It snow a
A
little
little
bit.
bit. Thank you for the correction. You were supposed to push your glasses up and say, well, actually, before you start. But it is true. I still have a brother-in-law who has 3 work trucks, and he used to put plows on them and plow for the city or different contracts. But about 5, 6 years ago, he's like, yeah, it's not worth the time and expense of putting him on. And we haven't. We've had 2 dustings that haven't resulted in school delays, school closures. It gets really cold like the next day, so it doesn't go anywhere. So it's more
Yeah.
a 1 inch layer of ice / snow everywhere. But the streets and stuff, but as far as you guys go, yeah, it's been
Yeah.
horrific. But that concert, management had a friend who was lucky enough to be there.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And apparently, Nirvana was an unannounced act.
Yeah, that was not on the bill. No.
And it's amazing to see because, yeah, a lot of people forget like the last album and the last, couple tours that, Pat Schmier, best known for, being in the Foo Fighters,
Yeah.
Was a member of Nirvana. And
Yep.
so, and now there's this outcry. It's like, hey, they should tour with rotating singers. And, but who knows?
Do
But
the Queen thing, right? Do the Queen thing.
right, 100%. Well,
Yeah.
and then Queen ended up locking on Adam Lambert, and he is
Yeah,
their singer now.
yeah.
But that was great. I didn't do the shout out beforehand. Once again, we've been on an incredible roll with sideshow guests, and our
Yep.
sideshow guest last week, Matt Scherer. Joe, it's hard to rank them, but by far one of the best sideshow guests that we've had.
I'm going to rank him number 1
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh.
until next week's sideshow. Sorry,
And
Matt.
Yeah, but Matt Scherer was great. I wish I could have made it to his kind of famous show at Little Chuck last night in Boston. He was telling different stories from his career, different stories that he covered as the Little Chuck Improv Group played out the different stories. There's
Yeah,
Joe
it was
like to say,
Improv Boss or Improv Asylum, I think is the group.
yeah. I'm quite sure that they took your note of doing Cops Light live, and it would have been fun to see what they did with that. But he was great. And next week's sideshow guest, I recorded this a little while back, but I pushed off on it. It's a guy named Robbie Prince, one of those legendary 30-plus year comedians from Boston. I haven't worked with him much because up until recently, he's 90% cruise ship guy. Like,
Okay.
we have a lot of friends that we've had
Yeah.
guests who do cruise ships once a
Yeah.
month, but he is that's his thing. Once he aged out of Menudo and doing college tours, he did that. But his son, who is 15 years old, is a full-time comedian.
Wow.
Like literally, Joe, a full-time comedian where he is now homeschooling so that he can be going out on the ships with his dad. And he has played some of the most beloved establishments in Boston that I've yet to get to play, like Lenny Clark's Giggles. But I've done a few shows with him. And the reason I pushed the podcast to next week is over February vacation. Those who can do, those who can't teach. And I am teaching a teen comedy class at the North Reading Library over February vacation. And I'm having Ethan come in to be the headliner on the showcase we're going to do for the kids in the class. Good kid. Not a good 15-year-old comic, a good comic.
Yeah.
Like he has so much
obviously, right?
composure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, if he's doing the circuit. By the way, I once read that we all use literally wrong because I guess literal means, it's in literature, so it's supposed to be something that's symbolic and not actual. But we use literally to mean actually or something like that. So apparently we're all using it wrong.
So
Yeah.
literally, we're using literally wrong. Okay.
It's kind of like how we all open our cans wrong on our can opener. You're supposed to kind of cut the ridges rather than to create the
Yeah.
cut on the top.
I've tried. I saw those videos. I granted I'm a dumb monkey who, maybe
Yeah.
I'm not right-handed after all.
And also, we drive on a parkway, but we park in a driveway.
Driveway.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
understand.
It's just so ridiculous. Yeah, but getting back to Ethan, it's one of those
Yeah.
things. This kid gets a lot of advantages because of who his dad is and other stuff. On the other hand, it cuts both ways because he gets those people are waiting for him to fail.
Well, so you know what? Let's do this. Let's talk about it after it airs so that we can see
Yeah,
that. Talking about it
100%.
as a retrospective.
100%. But I was
Yeah.
just going to say, like a pro athlete,
Yeah.
Gretzky's kid would get a quicker look from a scout, but at the same time, oh, he's no Gretzky. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of stuff works both ways. But yeah, that's going to be next week's podcast. But a couple of weeks ago, we had Emily Rosowski, who was beyond a delight, and then I got to work with her a couple of weeks. After that, I've got to work with her again. I should say she's great. Matt Shear was just amazing. And then next week it's Robbie and Ethan Prince, or as I say, Ethan Prince and his free Uber driver to all of his shows, some guy named Robbie. So that should be a lot of fun. But I am my sister and her boss from the library came to see a show I did in December, and it went very well. It was beyond packed. It was literally, I got to stop saying. Now it's stuck in my head. But Joe was here. Joe, how insane was that Christine Hurley show?
It wasn't quite insane, since the definition of insane. No, it was.
I hate you.
It was fun. Christine Hurley is a gem.
Yeah.
We brought a cake in reference to the birthday podcast that we did with her. It was a blast. They cleared the buffet out of the stage area right before, so it's still. I think you can still smell the boneless spare ribs in the air. It was a nice added touch. And they served Chinese food at Kyoto restaurant, so I didn't know what to think anymore. Anyway, yeah, fun time.
And my sister's boss had never been to a comedy show like that. Had a great time. Then they were trying to figure out what new different thing they can do over February vacation. And my sister called me and said, "Hey, would you run a teen comedy class?" And I said, "Yes, I definitely will." So it's really great. I mean, comedy has opened up tonight as we record this, or last night as this podcast drops. I was back at Wicked Funny hosting the Luna Foundation, aka Aruba Dog Rescue. There's a big Boston comedian named Aruba Ray who goes back and forth. We've talked about him a number of times because he brings all the big comedians down there, like, for a week at a time. He has a club down there, but also does a lot of rescue stuff. And so I am hosting a fundraiser for Aruba Rescue there tonight. And it's great. I mean, it is having, got into this comedy thing and be at the point where I get to host stuff and be part of different kind of fundraisers and different kind of like real positivity things in a world that needs a lot of positivity things.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's such a
No, Donald Trump's the president of the United States again. Haven't you heard? That's what we're talking about. That's the bad thing we're talking about.
Do we even? That's not the bad thing. That's a bad thing, sure.
Yeah.
But the horribleness is the horrible people who are now like last time. He didn't really have a horrible plan ready to go on day one. This time,
you're saying he planned better.
Yes. No,
well,
the people around him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
This time, I mean, he is surrounded by the richest, powerful people in the world who control all the media.
I don't understand. Did Elon Musk become like vice president? What the fuck? How is he? What? Huh?
I like the fact that the rumor is people hate when folks refer to him as President Musk. So if you could hashtag President Musk and get that trending, because the only hope humanity has is the infighting. You know what I mean? That is the only hope, is the implosion. We are
Well, the
hoping,
Democrats excel at that, so we can teach them a thing or two.
100%. That and homemade subs for billionaires could teach them a thing about imploding, which would be really great. But I'm trying to be positive. And I talked to Joe yesterday about this, Biff. Dante the comic and I had a great conversation, and he said, yeah, it is hopeless, it is horrible, but you're now in this club where you now have kind of an obligation to try to deal with this in any way you can, still being funny through comedy. It's like if there's any way you can start chipping away at things. And we had a great discussion about like how to address people, how to talk to people, because I had a show a couple of weeks ago. I walked in to set up the gear. Very nice show, very nice couple running the show, and they're setting up the tables, and the husband says to me, and this is on the 24th, oh, you must be really excited about the 20th. And I said, February 20th? He goes, no, 20th, the other day. I'm like, and he goes, oh, you can say the R word and the F word now. Because, people who follow that side of the fence literally believe that they've been censored so much that you can't say those words without getting arrested,
to be fair, at least the person didn't say the N word in that list, though.
Because he's afraid of people punching him in the face.
Right.
Not so much the R words or the F words.
But it's true, and look, and I said to him, I said, well, I have a special needs child and my other son's gay, so I don't say those words anyway. Like I wanted to shut it down, but without, and so Dante was saying, great. Now the next thing to do is like, how can you educate? Like, how can you, because it's sad. It's like at one point or another, you have to be able to either find a way to feel like you're doing something, or just the first 4 years when Joe started this podcast for me to be complete therapy. I'm not going to let the negativity completely overwhelm everyday life. It sucks. And, and the hope is, can I find ways to, one great suggestion is, cutting back on a subscription service to one of the 9 streaming services, and can that money, that $15 a month, go to the ACLU or something like that? Not shop at Target unless you're specifically shopping at Target for brands that are minority owned or women owned businesses, because you don't want to hurt them, because you don't want to go to Target because they canceled the DEI program. But we renewed our, we were BJ's shopping family, because there's a BJ wholesalers.
And for those of you outside of New England, that's like Sam's Club, and it's
correct.
Membership grocer kind of.
Short for Berkeley and Jensen. Anyway,
did not know. Thank you.
Well, if you're a shopper of BJ's, you'll notice that some of the generic store brands are labeled Berkeley and Jensen, or were at some point.
I haven't.
I'm autistic. I notice these things.
Yeah, well, I'm at the point in my marriage where I have to shop for BJ's too. So I'm sorry, we're talking about something else. We're talking about something else. I'm sorry.
But I did. But on that same street, like within a mile radius, there's a Costco, and the reason we go to the BJ's is because they also have the gas. So if you have a BJ's membership, it's like 15 cents cheaper on gas. I'll still get that to get the cheap gas, but I'm not going to be shopping there, or I'm not going to be shopping at Target as much. Any places that cancel the DEI programs. Now, I've also heard a lot of things. There's food deserts out there where, there's people who don't have the choice but to go to a Walmart and shop. There's just people don't have the luxury of saying, well, I won't go to Target. I'll go right across the street to the Costco, and we have the extra freezer downstairs. So I can buy in bulk. Not everybody has, that luxury, but when I do have to go to the other stores, I am specifically going to, okay, well, I will buy this product versus that product because I know they haven't canceled their DEI programs and, all that stuff. So does it matter? I don't know. It's just like when I separate the recycling. Does it really matter? Probably not. But I feel like if I take the extra 5 minutes to take all the cans out of the trash that my son just refuses to put in the recycling right next to the trash, do I feel like I'm helping somewhat? Yeah, and maybe it doesn't, but that's my goal. We'll circle back, but I don't know how you guys are dealing with, I won't say literal, but I'll say actual Nazis running the country now.
I think you have to think like you're actually doing something about things, right? Like you're actually doing something to act on it. So what I'm doing is looking at Japanese real estate websites, and hey.
We told you not to come. Didn't we not tell you to stay there so we could come over? I think Joe and I were very clear, Biff.
You can buy homes for the price of a car.
Wow, what? No, geez. like a Tesla car, or like what kind of car are we talking about? But no, I'm coping by giving up, which is what I started doing a couple of years ago. So that's the state of things. I'm completely useless. I'm more feckless now than ever. I've honestly, I didn't even know that Target and BJ's canceled their DEI programs. So I guess I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna shop at fucking thrift stores now. Is that where I'm like, where do I go to get my stuff where I don't feel like I'm sinning against my liberal values?
The woke ginger. The woke ginger is a follow on the socials who goes company by company.
So you mean the socials that are run by Meta, which is
right?
owned by Mark Zuckerberg?
Right. You're right. I mean,
well, what am I gonna fucking do?
Well, that's what I mean. It's like, yes, do I hate the fact that I have to be on Instagram? Do I hate the fact that I have to very literally be literal, not literally, a very small amount, a very small amount, seldomly, thank you, have to be on Facebook? No, I do hate that, but like they do control all that media, and for right now, they're still allowing people like the woke ginger to go on and say, here are the companies that support these causes. Here's the documentation. Like, it's not like, hey, this is what I think, conspiracy theory. He actually researches and puts up. No, and like I said, I don't want it to dominate this show, our conversations, every conversation with my wife. And I'd like to bury my head in the sand. The problem is, and people who say both sides are the same, or people who say it really doesn't make a difference, it does not make a difference to Joe and I. A less degree to you, Biff, but it doesn't make a difference to Joe and I. We are white, straight, middle-class guys. We are the last people on their targeted list. We're also, aren't members of a different religious group or something like that. But just in my immediate family, they've already put forward the idea of taking my wife's citizenship away, even though her dad is an American, even though she was born in America. Both parents weren't born here. She's not really American. My brother-in-law, who's from Colombia, and it took him 30 years to get his citizenship. They are actively not talking about, they're not talking about taking away his citizenship. My son, who's gay, every single day he shows me an article where this state has just filed to take away his future right to adopt, his rights to marriage, like all those things. So it's not like I can sit on the sideline and pretend these bad things are happening to somebody else on the other side of the world. We decided we weren't going to talk very much about the Israel-Palestinian thing because we weren't educated enough on it. There's nothing we could really do about it. But this is stuff I have to, if I don't talk about it here, it's fine. I don't want it to dominate my life. But at the same time, I can't do nothing as my family's rights are taken away. And these tragedies are hitting home. My wife has a very good friend who intersects with our world a little bit, Biff. She is an adult figure skater who got into figure skating later in life, and her rink for the first 20 years of skating was in Culver City.
Oh, okay.
And her figure skating coach, her first figure skating coach, was a figure skater that statuette, or that billboard figure skater.
Right. Yeah.
And she came out to visit. She came out just before Halloween, and her and management drove down to New York City together to see a concert. I don't think I have to mention which band, but it was funny because I called Taylor and I said, hey, do you know who that statuette was? And so it's fun. The unfun thing is she had 6 friends who were on that plane, the adult figure skaters.
Yeah, the plane that collided with the Black Hawk helicopter over the Potomac. And we if you follow the story, you kind of read up on the articles like, the FAA was severely cut back recently because of certain policies that were put into place. Also, that night there was one air traffic controller doing the work of two. So we're already seeing the effects of the new administration and how cutting back out of spite.
Joe, Joe, you're all wrong. Right away, they said it was the DEI program. It wasn't the 2 white pilots on the airplane or the 2 white pilots in the helicopter. It wasn't the white air traffic controller who was being overworked. It was the DEI program. And that's before the wreckage hit the bottom of the Potomac. They were already putting out a statement. This is why we can't have the DEI program. And of course, there are people, none of them say, well, that doesn't make sense. And then so the next day they're like, well, it was also Biden's fault. It's like, wait, day one, President Elon, because the guy who was head of the FAA had fined SpaceX for not following safety protocols, fired the guy. So, they're complete disarray. And then what was it, the next day, the day after? Another plane crash, civilian plane crash.
The
small medical plane went in. So, it's not fun or funny, but listen, I know you don't want we don't want to talk about it and let it dominate our lives, but it's kind of new. It's kind of like this is happening. Like, it's not like we were living with the second presidential term for 2 years now. Like, this is it. We need some catharsis. Like, we need some way to vent. And also hey, let's say if the German people of the 1930s had a podcast that didn't like what was going on, maybe they would also want to use that platform to voice their discontent. So as a side hustle, I am selling buckets of sand to liberals so they can put their heads in them. Doing very well. I mean, so capitalism is still alive, baby.
No, well, if you sell enough of those buckets, you then don't have to pay taxes either. So the goal is to be uber rich, so that you then dumb shits like Biff, who pays his taxes, will just have to pay more of his taxes. Yeah, I mean, but seriously, Biff, you live in LA. Joe and I live here. For now, we're safe-ish. There are safety nets. There are pushbacks from our governments here. But I will tell you this. Let me say something positive. And Joe, you're right. And Dante was right. What little you can do, even if it moves the needle, we have to do what we can. Let me shout out again something I love about the city of Lowell. Day 2 of the administration, they started the rounding up, the ICE agents rounding people up. Look, I don't care where you weigh in on immigration, legal or otherwise, but there has to be a line. And you see the footage of them going in and taking people off of hospital beds. Like, what kind of good Christian says, well, we got to get this motherfucker out of here, whether he dies or not. He'll die in some other country. He's not going to die here. Yeah. Going into schools, going into churches. These are the people who are the religious fanatics. And yes, they're not real religious fanatics, but they're religious fanatics enough to know that they can get the religious fanatics 100% behind them by adopting the religious fanatics platform. So all these great religious people who want the churches to be part of the government but have some autonomy, well, now they're going into churches. He has suspended, sanctuary zones of churches. So you see ICE going into churches and dragging people away. Well, the superintendent of Lowell, we got the robocall last week. And it was a very detailed message about what the city policy is on educating and dealing with ICE and immigration enforcement. They are not allowed in schools. They are not going to accept any warrants that aren't you can't come in with a warrant to search a school.
Blanket warrants.
Yeah. It has to be signed by a federal judge. I have to come in and I'm going after, Joe or Biff at this location. I can't pick up Joe's brother in the hopes that Joe comes to the police station to pick him up and then get Joe. So it was a very detailed message talking about this has been the policy. It was voted in and before the first term. This is how they deal, because Lowell is known as the city of immigrants. The superintendent is from Ireland. The mayor is the first Cambodian-born mayor in the U.S. The big Cambodian, population in the town. All the school committee positions and all the city council members, are white people, roughly my age, men and women. But they also are doing right by the constituents. And also the message reminded people, if you come here and you live in Lowell, we will educate you. We will feed you breakfast and lunch when you get to school. We don't need to see your paperwork. We don't need to see your parents' paperwork. You're a child. We're going to educate you. This is a poor town or a poorer town, or, a town that has some challenges. Yeah. And like I said, during the pandemic, I was unaware that the town had already had a policy where everybody gets breakfast and lunch. And it was not a statewide thing. Tim Walz had done it a few years ago. The state of Massachusetts adopted it last year. But I found out during the pandemic that they chose years before that we're going to feed kids.
That's the thing with this country, right? It's basically those kind of things are decided on by the school districts, right? So
100%. Because there's
yeah,
nicer towns around us where you hear stories now and then that little Timmy couldn't go on a field trip because he owed $6. He was $6
yeah.
behind in his lunch thing. It's like, wait, field trips are educational opportunities. So you're taking an educational opportunity. Just because a kid lives in Lexington doesn't mean he's rich. That, fun fact, there are poor people in Andover. There are poor people in Manhattan
Well, I mean,
Beach.
there's also these a lot of like districts exceptions, right? Where like if the parents work in Lexington and they have to be able to drop off their kids and stuff like that, there's all kinds of right.
But it is a
Yeah,
town by town thing. But
yeah,
luckily, more and more states have come in. But again, in the 2025 thing, and I know people don't want to hear us talking about this all the time, but the fact is, it's happening. It's like I got into an argument with my dad several months ago.
yeah,
I asked not to talk about it. He brought something up, and I'm like, no,
yeah,
this is happening. Like I said, they came in day one. So the roundup started, and the superintendent sends out that message letting you know that the principals and the administrations have had training. They don't get a memo. They've actually had training how to deal with ICE if they show up. And, we have some people like that we're very close to who I've made sure that they have my contact number, that they have the right number, that they have a cheat sheet, that they know their basic rights. But it's tough because from airline crashes it's secondhand or third hand. It's my wife's friend and it was her friends who were on that. But within the first couple weeks, they're already filing to take away rights, like human rights. If you're gay, you're not really going to get your same human rights. Oh, if you're this, you're not going to get these taking
they're
away
with trans
programs.
people, and they're going to chip away
yeah.
until they start at the least populated, marginalized group.
Yep.
And kind of erode away from there till there's basically like
It's
only
kind of
straight white.
yeah.
And then
Yeah,
when they came for me,
yeah, well, it's like it's a completely different situation with me and the wildfires, right? But the parallel is that like all of this is other people's problems until stops being other people's problems. Like wildfires in many ways were like and we're in a different situation because we've been evacuated before. We have perpetual bug out bags and stuff like that. That's something that we've done. But I mean, in many ways, like this is a wake up call for a lot of people because you know what people like actual friends have lost their homes, right? They now have homeless friends, and so I think similar to that, eventually what's going to come to play is that eventually if these things kinds of progressively expanding persecutions do continue, eventually it's going to hit somebody that's going to be close to you. I mean, and then at that point, what are these people going to do?
What I'm really kind of upset about is sort of like the sort of capitulation and rolling over from the Democratic leaders. Like they're supposed to be standing up for
Yeah,
democratic values, and instead they're just sort of it's almost like the British appeasement,
yeah,
the pre-World War II era. It's just like, well, we won't push as hard against the trans rights being eroded away, or we'll write a strongly worded letter on a Saturday to the president.
It's even worse than that. You had leadership coming out right after the election saying, well, maybe we got too liberal. Maybe we went too far. Maybe we wanting people to get pay raises and have a living wage was too much to ask. Maybe asking to respect somebody's was too much to ask.
And who are people, like, who are they asking? That's the other thing. It's just like the current administration and their Gestapo, they're not asking anything. They're fucking doing. They're doing it, and that's the MO. And if it gets pushed to the courts, so be it. God help me. I was watching this week with George Stephanopoulos this morning, and Chris Christie, of all people, a Republican, was commenting on the current tactics. And I had to agree with almost everything that Chris Christie had to say about what the Trump administration is doing, and like his opinion, basically saying like, look, this is what Trump likes. Like he likes the legal challenges. Chris Christie mentioned like 2010, New Jersey was in arrears. They were like $10 billion in debt. He talked to Donald Trump and said, Donald Trump told him, well, yeah, just file for bankruptcy. And he's like, I'm a state. I can't file for bankruptcy. And Trump was like, just do it anyway and let the courts handle it. And, by the time it gets through the court system, people have forgotten about it and you'll come out clean at the end. That's kind of the way he's running the country
100%. Yeah. And there's just like last time, there's so much awful you can't follow it all, and something that's getting lost in the shuffle, and maybe it's on the radar of you two gentlemen, the absolute push to further restrict voting. They're trying to raise the voting age, and they're also like this last election, and you guys are well aware of this, the number of states that passed laws where you could not have voting on college campuses. The last thing they want is educated people to be voting. So they're making it harder and harder. Once again, it's illegal. And we're going back to 1860s. Like they're going back and now trying to restrict Native Americans, saying Native American IDs are not U.S. IDs, therefore disqualify you for voting in a U.S. election, and not having U.S. voting stations accessible on Native territory, which of course, as we know, the Native American community is the most impoverished community statistically. There are so many people who can't get off where they live, or it's not easy for them to get off. They can't afford to get a Nevada state ID, and they don't need one because, once again, we made a treaty with them 100 years ago that says, yes, this Native American ID that's used on your, but how can that make the news when there's another plane crash, when there's another ICE raid in a hospital, when there's another, restriction put on gay people being able to visit loved ones in the hospital again? I mean, they're trying to take all these stuff away that's, makes all the headlines, but then all that stuff, it's like, they know their opinions aren't popular. They know they're going to lose people bit by bit, because no matter how conservative you are, you might, because you've seen that, like there was some, and I don't want to see this, but my manager had shown me, some state senator's wife complaining that their housekeeper was picked up in an ICE thing. It's like, but she's one of the good ones. They have to understand there's some people who want to be here or work or are part of our family. It's like, right. But she thought she was getting a carve out.
It's more so like, these are the immigrants I need. Like, you're taking, I need these immigrants. Like they're, maybe we have an affection for some of these, immigrants that we've hired, but like, I need these immigrants. These should be exempt.
Can we be positive for just a second? Eggs are now back to $1 a dozen eggs, right? Eggs are almost free now.
Yeah,
right. Yes, gas prices are like what is like what do you say, Biff? You paid $1.25 for a gallon of gas.
Actually, here's a not funny story about eggs is that the previous measures that they used to control bird flu isn't working. So do you know what the farmers are suggesting? They're suggesting vaccines for the birds, and you know what that's going to happen. What that's going to do, right? We're going to have chicken autism.
I don't want to get autism by eating scrambled eggs. I don't.
How do you
want to
get
bird autism? Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I Jacques, you have something to say?
Well, I was going to say I was going to suggest making little masks for the birds, like little COVID masks for the birds. But yet again, and I sound like a wingnut when I say this, but I want to say Kentucky or Tennessee, like there's a difference. They just proposed outlawing 20 new things. One of them is masks in public. Yes. And you know what? I'm proud of my two sons. My manager, we were all in the car the other day, and she had said, "Oh, this just happened." And my little guy said, "Did you verify that?" Like, no, in a good way, because, somebody I like posted a picture of ICE agents leading somebody away who was wearing a Latinos for Trump shirt. And before I reposted or comment on it, I did. I looked it up. And that was fake. And I don't want to do the thing that I complain about very much, is like spreading misinformation. So when I hear something, I don't take the Huffington Post word at it, or Fox News post. I will look at the BBC or CBC. And look, like the BBC and CBC, they're conservative leaning too. But I will try to verify something. But yes, I forget which state it is. One of the new bills that they just proposed in their house, their state house new thing, is 20. And some of them are asinine beyond belief. But like one of the biggest ones was that. And here's the thing that is going to make people lose their shit, hopefully. But I don't know if there's a line anymore. There is now two big pushes going on that we've talked about on this podcast a couple of years ago. Some people in the conservative circles pointed out a couple of years ago that there is not a constitutional right to an education. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, sure. But there is nothing in the Constitution that says we will educate your child. There's also nothing in the rule book that says an elephant can't pitch. True. So there are states that are now running with that. So basically that what they want is, can you afford a private education? Oh, you can? Great. Well, they're not outlawing schools. We're just not going to teach your children. And those happen to be, and it's a coincidence, the same states that has repealed and taken away child labor laws. Oh, your 8-year-old can't go to school. Well, we got to, compete with Thailand for making sneakers again, or Guam, or where, like I'm trying to think of the poorest places where, they're paying 10-year-olds to.
Territory.
Yeah, it is. It's Guam. But I'm trying to think where all the sneakers are made now, because it's a shell game, because they move from place to place. Right. It's like,
Malaysia,
these people,
Indonesia, China, right? Malaysia,
they will work for $1.10 an hour. Whoa, these guys will work for 95 cents an hour.
Right.
So let's move everything there. So that's the stuff that is actually happening. And the other big one, because we really thought taking a woman's rights away was going to mean something. Apparently, it didn't. But conception, like taking away birth control. Not Plan B, not the after thing, but birth control. And people say, "Oh, you're crazy." It's like, in your lifetime, Biff, you're a couple years older than me. It wasn't until 1965, somebody versus state of Connecticut. I forget who the plaintiff was. Sued because condoms were not legal in the state of Connecticut, and now they want to bring that back. They, because the birth numbers are down, statistically and stuff like that. So they're trying to get teen pregnancy up. You know what I mean? They're trying.
The white birth number.
The white birth rates numbers are down. Right. So they want to
keep
restrict.
this all in perspective. This is all through a white spectrum. Like all these 100% initiatives are just like bolstering the white power movement
and white male spectrums, because management brought up another great point the other day. So there are some states that have now petitioned that life begins at conception. Like that is, well, so here's the thing. If life begins at conception, does the father of this child now being obligated to pay child support for that life?
I'm sorry. I need to stop you right there. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that a father has to support a
correct.
child.
Correct. But let's, the state of Nebraska has, with the exception of Tulsa, and there's two cities that can have homeless shelters. What kind of fucking piece of shit Christians outlaw homeless shelters? And once again, the stereotype is it's people on drugs and alcohol.
Well, once again, does the Bible say anything about homeless shelters?
No. Yes, it actually does. Several times. It makes two veiled references to homosexuality. It says about 1 billion times.
Is that right? I don't
you're
know.
going to be
I never
judged.
read the Bible.
Oh, well, the passage where it says, treat the alien in your land as a native born. You will be judged how you treat the poorest among us.
That's what the people are supposed to do, not the government.
Well, but the thing is, when you're outlawing homeless shelters, but here's my whole point.
By the way,
yes.
Before we get down the rabbit hole, you to mention a point that you said earlier, that there's nothing in the Constitution for all of these protections. The life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right?
Right.
There's what's that second word? Liberty.
Liberty, yeah.
Which is, I'm quoting a dictionary definition, the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions.
Yeah.
So, hey man, if we're gonna be letter of the law for the and by the way,
Joe, I got to stop you right there. The new press secretary did say the other day that the Constitution isn't constitutional.
Oh, by the way, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is not in the Constitution. So,
it's in the Bill of Rights, right? It's in the Bill of Rights.
No, it's in the Declaration of Independence.
Declaration of Independence.
Yeah. Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution.
Is that the document that starts all men are created equal? except the black ones. Wait, what was that? So these documents are flawed, and I get it. But yeah, the press secretary said the other day that the Constitution, the Constitution isn't constitutional.
Yeah.
Anyways, but the whole thing about the homeless shelters, here's my main point with that. Are there people with mental health challenges? Yes. Is drug and alcohol abuse a mental health challenge? Yes. But the plurality of people in this country at homeless shelters tend to be women fleeing domestic violence situations and or families. And the number of people who are one paycheck away from being homeless, people who have full-time jobs, pillars of the community whose rents have doubled, and if one of the two of them gets sick, or if it's a single family income and somebody gets sick, the number of people on the brink of homelessness. So you're outlawing, make it illegal to have homeless shelters. I mean, look, again, I just praised Lowell. On the other hand, the city of Lowell was finding the Elliott Church, this non-denominational church that has a soup kitchen that's run out of it, $300 a day, because they won't stop feeding the homeless because there's an encampment around them that they're like, well, because you're feeding them, they're coming here. Because they're coming here, it's an unsafe thing for everybody else in the community. So you have to stop feeding these people who need to be fed at your church. It's like, so it is. It's like, that's the kind of stuff that I did. I called the mayor's office. I wrote the mayor's office, and I'm like, this isn't Lowell. Yes, maybe there's legit things. It's like some of those encampments, they're not safe for the people who live there. They're not safe. I mean, especially in the winter.
I mean, but the solution isn't to, punish the church. Just punish the church.
Or to stop feeding them.
Right. Okay, so let's do this. This is so depressing.
Let's cap it. Let's get on to something good.
So tell me something great that's happened in the last 3 weeks.
Marc-Andre Fleury's reception by the Montreal Canadiens is everything that can be right in sports in the world.
Yeah. I mean,
you want to talk about that for a sec?
When it comes down to Marc-Andre Fleury, probably a first-time Hall of Famer at this point, and a beloved player just because it's one of those guys that just a sunny guy, and always says the right things, and people just. The fans just love him if they know who he is. It's like, it doesn't matter which team he's on. They just love the guy. And obviously this is his hometown. This is where he grew up. This is where he probably wanted to play. But it's going to be the last time, where, he got to play in the, building he was, hoping, he was basically, that's the, building he dreamed of playing in as a kid. It's just great to see the fans being so kind to him, and it's just great to see him just responding the way we expected him to, with so much, grace and emotion, and so yeah, absolutely.
I did. So Joe, they lined up for the handshake like they do after a playoff game, but it was just Marc-Andre Fleury going through the line. So the entire Montreal organization, all the people from the organization came down to the bench to shake his hand, and it was like he was retiring at his own home break. It was great. And for those who don't know Marc-Andre Fleury, a great goalie, unarguably a great goalie. But Biff, why don't you tell one or two of the better Marc-Andre Fleury stories that have nothing to do with hockey?
He is like a notorious prankster. One of the things that his former teams have to essentially hide their equipment so that Fleury, so that he won't kind of break into the locker room and prank them. So I mean, this has been an ongoing thing. There was one involving I thought that he ended up putting one of the players' car inside the tunnels of the arena or something like that. So he could basically he couldn't get it. And so there's been a lot of these. I know you don't like the guy because he was a Canuck and they played.
Oh no! His after 2011. I loved him because when he went to Florida and he really got to show what a crazy fun guy he is.
He's always been a funny guy. Yeah, basically he puts players' equipment into essentially players have found all of their equipment in one bundle taped with hockey tape. So before they they basically have to unravel before they that kind of stuff is pretty
I'm reading
common.
an article on Fleury's pranks, and one of it is quoted. A classic prank was hanging guys' clothes from the rafters.
Oh, yeah. just a generally beloved guy.
But so that was fun. So yeah, let's look at a couple positive things. Nirvana getting back together, the Mark Andrew Fleury reception. Joe, what positive things do you have going on in gaming world?
Nothing.
Okay, what positive things do you have going over on your Plex account that we got to watch together this week?
What did we watch? We watched an episode of Alice.
We watched the darkest episode of Alice ever,
which was depressing. So whatever.
Yeah. I did see Linda Levin at the airport once, where she was on the same flight that I was, and then I said, "Hey, that's Linda Levin," but I'm not going to bother her. And then, like a few moments later, she got the upgrade. So he goes, "Miss Levin, please come up to the counter." So it's cool. Linda Levin got her upgrade. So
nice. We watched a Barney Miller. We watched on Peacock. We watched a documentary on SNL's Weird Year, season 11, 1985 to 1986, the one with Anthony Michael Hall,
like Christopher Guest, that is
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. was like after the Chris Guest season. Yeah, it was just like it was the year that Lorne Michaels had returned to Saturday Night Live after being away for 4 years. Dick Ebersol left.
I did not realize that he was away. Okay.
Yeah, so he left in 1980, and Dick Ebersol, and then it was Gene Domanian who took over as the executive producer of Saturday Night Live. That was the Gilbert Gottfried year, the Charles Rocket year. That was like the really weird 13 episode season where it was just completely off the rails.
Is that 1990?
No, 1980. 80, year 5. And then, so Lorne Michaels left. Lorne Michaels left for 5 years. The year before he came back, they went and they gave 1-year contracts to, and it was Christopher Guest, it was Billy Crystal,
Martin Short.
Martin. When Lorne Michaels came back, he didn't fire anybody. He just didn't pick up anybody's contract.
Right.
And Billy Crystal had been an unofficial, like he had hosted a number of times, like the first few years, and he he was a big thing at the time where his career was in a different place at that point because of soap and stuff like that. He would have stayed, and a lot of them I've heard in interviews over the years is like, they had a good time, they would have stayed, but Lorne came in and wanted to start fresh, like ground floor. And so that first year, spoiler alert, Joe, why don't you tell them how season 1 or season 11 ended? The last episode, how the last sketch ended.
Yeah, so it was a rocky season. Joan Cusack was in the cast, Randy Quaid, like I said, Anthony Michael Hall, Robert Downey. But then we also had like Dennis Miller coming on board. We had John Lovitz, Nora Dunn, the people who would kind of go on for years on Saturday Night Live were introduced in the 85-86 season. But the final sketch was kind of a cliffhanger and really a really dark one because it started in a locker room, I believe, right? Or was it a locker room? Yeah. Anyway,
dressing room, locker room, yeah.
The dressing room, right. Anyway, so they're in there and it's a bunch of cast members. They think that the season went well. They can't wait to come back next year. And all of a sudden, a fire breaks out in the room. Cuts to Lorne Michaels outside of the room. You see smoke coming through the door. He goes in and rescues John Lovitz and says, hey, John, just go this way right now. Don't worry. Don't ask any questions, but, just be safe. And then he calls in a couple of the writers, quote unquote. And it's just these 3 handsome guys who are obviously not writers. And he tells them to go into the burning room.
Oh, yeah. There's snacks. There's snacks in the back of the room.
Snacks. And then it cuts. And then as the credits roll, you see like flames superimposed on the room and smoke filling this room with all of these actors, like the entire cast and these writers, quote unquote, with a chyron over it saying like, who will survive the season? Who will come back next season? And it was really like,
wow.
It was
tell about the credit scroll.
Right. And then all the credits have, writer Al Franken, ? Tom Davis, ? Like every credit had a question mark at the end because they weren't sure, they were not sure. And they were on the verge. I think they actually said that they were going to cancel Saturday Night Live. Brandon Tartikoff, then president of NBC, made a decision to cancel Saturday Night Live in the off season. And it got back not to Lorne Michaels, but to like somebody else in the group that was higher up, and they said, no, you can't cancel Saturday Night Live. It's an institution. Really think about this. And obviously they weathered the storm. But yeah, season 12 started off with virtually everybody knew except for like I think Robert Smigel was brought on as a writer in that season, but he stayed on and obviously became head writer. But yeah, it was just
Al Franken had stayed on too.
Franken, yeah.
Let's say Dennis Miller made the cut.
Dennis, John Lovitz,
Couple. There was Nordon.
Yeah.
So the season 11 started. Madonna was the host, and she hosted episode 1 of season, and she did the cold opening of season 12, where she read a letter explaining that last season was just a dream.
Horrible dream.
And that it didn't happen. Yeah, and whatever happened with the show after that? I haven't been following along, you know.
Hey, dummy, it's like in its 50th year.
Oh,
you're being sarcastic. Oh, see that? No, I'm sorry. That's my fault. I don't read sarcasm.
So a positive thing was that Joe's manager was out of town this week, and I got to go over for a couple of days and watch stuff. Sadly, because I'm on tour right now, I couldn't go over the rest of the week. Yeah, I had a show Friday in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a show last night down in Connecticut outside of Hartford, and then tonight in North Andover. So 3 states in 3 days. I will tell you, the show last night, Biff, was at a really cool place, a very big room, like a function hall place.
Cooler than a Chinese restaurant with a Japanese name and
dude, those shows are the best. That was 100. The capacity was 110, and they got 136 in that night. Nice. But yeah, this place last night. But it was a fundraiser for the town's like youth hockey. And it was great. So, you know, one of the jokes, not really jokes, but I went up there. I'm like, so I'm going on. It's like 9:00, and I said, so let me hear who are my hockey parents here, and half the room claps and stuff like that. I'm like, how can you afford to be here? You know, I got a good laugh, and I'm like, I pretend to look at my watch, like, don't you have a tournament in 6 hours that's 14 hours away where you're playing your neighbor's kid? So that got a laugh, but it was fun. But yeah, so that was a positive thing that, you know, Joe and I got to hang out and watch absolute garbage. And it's fun because Joe's oldest kid like hung out with us. And I really think he appreciates spending time watching his idiot dad and his idiot dad's friend watch idiot stuff together. And at one point, you know, Joe and I had like a little interaction that just got the biggest laugh out of him that night, you know, so that's a positive thing, you know. So yeah, I'm trying to find the positive things.
I do remember a couple of positives on the side. I was being facetious because I was like, I'm just pissed at the world. I did finish before I canceled the service. I finished Indiana Jones and the Great Circle for the Xbox. I have the newest Xbox, and I had the subscription Game Pass service, which was like $20-something a month. I've canceled it. It's a nice service. It's cool to have access to all those games, but I have more games than I can ever get through in one lifetime. If I really want to play like a newer game, I'll just wait to borrow it from the library or whatever, or I'll buy it if I really, 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 really want it. But I cut back on that. But I did finish the Indiana Jones game. Great game, by the way. And if you just watch cutscenes of it on YouTube, if you're an indie fan, it's like the guy who does the voice actually did the voice for one of the Batman games as Batman, like that offshoot game, you know, Arkham Origins. A guy named Troy Baker. He does a dead-on Harrison Ford. And you travel around the world like Indiana Jones does. And best of all, you get to shoot Nazis and fascists. And beat them
That's
up.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of that. So
remember when they were the bad guys?
I do.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. And yeah, so I got and you know, to be able to finish a game is kind of a treat, you know, especially with these longer games, you know. So this one was like it was well done. So
you know, video game adjacent to you also. I don't know if you've seen the Universal Studios Japan opened their new Donkey Kong Country.
Oh.
Yes, I have seen that. It has doubled down on my family's wish to get there sooner than later. Well, management had let us know about Duran Duran's tour schedule through Europe next year. And she's like, oh, they're like in Denmark, and maybe you and the oldest one can take a train over and see Hafen for the day in Sweden and stuff like that. And she was naming other places. And the little guy was there, said, or we could not do any of that and go to Japan like we've been wanting to do, so we can race Mario Karts in the street, so that we can go to, you know, Disneyland.
I don't know they can race Mario Karts in the street.
But the oldest one, next September he's 18. I don't, unless it's a 21 thing, but he's also
it might be a 20 thing.
Okay.
So yeah, so the legal, it might be an 18 thing, but you probably want to look that one up because like in Japan, like adulthood starts at 20.
They
Yeah.
just slip the guy at the door a couple $1,000 yen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like, what, it's like, look, if I can get a 20-year-old, a 12-year-old in the Knicks comedy stop on a Friday
You know
night.
what's funny about like stuff like that in that country? Like, there was this like, embezzlement slash, bribery case on the ruling party that literally destroyed their last election, that kicked out their last prime minister. It's so weird. Like when you have corruption in the government, like, that country weirdly reacts to it. It's not wacky.
Well, it's like I think that's an overreaction. It's not like
Yeah.
somebody was using the outlet outside of 7-Eleven
That's
to
right.
use a hot plate.
The other funny thing is that like, there was a like a long time he was one of those singer, idol singer turned, just the TV
Yes,
celebrity.
that kid. Yes, I remember that story.
Well, so
yes.
what happened? Well, no, this is the new one. I don't know if you know
Oh.
this. Well, so he's been doing this for a long time, and apparently they had some kind of a company party, and during that company party, he I don't know the details of what he actually did, but they apparently invited all these network female talents, announcers and those kinds of people, and apparently he sexually assaulted one of them, and this is so serious that. So if you remember like all these sexual assault allegations against, various people, like whatever, there's a bunch of them to name in this country, right? When they were talking about boycotts, they boycotted their show. But in Japan, because of this incident and because they said that, they perceived a lack of action by the network, like Toyota pulled all of their ads from their network. And several companies have pulled their ads to a point where they are filling ad space with random PSA kind of stuff. I mean, and this has been going on for about now a month. So like, it's so weird that a completely non-Christian company takes this kind of shit seriously.
But here on the other hand,
Yeah.
a guy convicted of raping somebody and having to pay a fine because the statute of limitation on the criminal charges ran out gets to be president. Anyway,
Yeah.
So we will wrap this up. Biff, it was absolutely great you being back.
Yep.
Sorry you had to come back under these circumstances. And by come back, I mean come back to the
Come back to
States.
this country. Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Okay, Biff, go back to where you came from, and please take Joe and I with you.
I mean, part of it might not be my decision anyway. So here we go.
Yeah. Hey,
apply for what? How about this? Apply for like a government position somewhere, and then have that way the federales will come in and intervene.
Right. Thank you. Hey, if I have to make a phone call anonymously, who's to say? But as long as, Joe and I can go with you, look, I'm sure that everything will work out here for our families.
They don't want us over there. They're super racist in Japan.
Yeah. But
No,
not
they're
towards
not.
us. Not towards us.
Oh, right.
I might get to feel tall for the first time in my life.
You do have to remove all your tattoos, though.
What? The Hello Kitty one? Are you kidding? I think I get a green card just for having that.
Nope. Tattoos are bad.
Tattoo free.
You could Japan is a country where you could. Well, so in Japan you could be discriminated for being foreign, and you could also be discriminated for having tattoos.
Wow.
True story.
But yet people here love to get Japanese symbol tattoos. Oh, the irony.
They think they're getting Japanese symbol tattoos, but in actuality, a lot of the times they're saying it says something completely different. So
I have been with Biff when Biff has asked people, hey, what do you think that means?
That thing means.
I've been with him at different places where, whether it's a pool at one of the hockey tournaments, or in the locker room and people are changing, and Biff just nonchalantly asks. And then somebody will tell Biff what it means, and Biff will just say, okay, keep going around thinking that. That's all good.
It's like Inigo Montoya and Princess Bride. I don't think that symbol means what you think it means.
Yeah.
You say that word a lot.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, this was a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you both in a couple weeks. And Joe, all done.
Yep.
Yes. Stay safe out there. Don't take any guff from these Nazis and fascists. Fuck them. Fuck them right in the ass. And I'm editing this podcast this week, so I'm leaving this in. I don't give a shit. You fuck those Nazis right up. Don't take any guff. As I cower in the corner quietly, as I delete my Twitter account, as I start recoiling further and further away into my own little cocoon of technology and social media. Yeah, I don't know, man. Look, this is what just slightly less than half the country wanted. So uh, we're stuck. We're stuck. But I guess we can fight back, try to fight back as much as we can when we see injustices. When you see something, say something, but don't say it too loud because if they hear you, they'll come and get you. Because oh man, we're in for it. But you know what? I don't know. Some people are cheering this shit on, so I don't know. I try to like separate the politics from the people. You know, like some of the people who we're friends with voted for this, and now we're stuck with them. And I'm trying not to be pissed at them. I'm trying not to like hold it against their character. I know that they're overall good people, but I'm trying not to think that they're complicit with everything that this guy is doing to the country. So I don't know. Try to keep that in mind. I don't know. Maybe draw a line between the Nazis and the Nazi sympathizers for now. And then I don't know. I don't know. Like what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? You know, start a civil war? Is that what? I know this is certainly not a call to arms for anybody. I guess just keep voicing our discontent, speak truth to power. Trans rights or human rights. Black Lives Matter. Jacques does not. Sorry, Jacques. I'm sorry. You know, we have to make cuts somewhere. And no, I'm teasing, of course. Here's to, you know, another year of fun on the podcast. Trust me, this is going to be fun. This is like fresh stuff for now. You know, we'll listen back to this, you know, months from now and be like, oh, what whiny assholes. Or we might be looking back and saying, oh, the simpler times of January
Yeah,
2025. Little did they know
that's
what
right.
was coming in May of 2025. Who knows? Keep your chin up. Yeah. And just, I don't know, keep up the good fight. Write your senators if you don't like what's going on. And yeah, donate to good causes. And, you know, yeah, boycott stores that you don't like. And good luck finding anything, you know? Grow your own clothes. That's what I
Yeah.
say. Oh man. Anyway, we'll get through this. This too shall pass. If that meteor strike happens, that you know, that'll be the great equalizer. Look it up. There is a meteor coming, apparently in 10
Yep.
years.
Yep.
We'll see. Anyway, Biff, good seeing you again. Jacques, I'll see you next week. And don't forget,